You are listening to the IFH Podcast Network. For more amazing filmmaking and screenwriting podcasts, just go to ifhpodcastnetwork.com.
Hey everyone, thank you very much for hitting that play button. This is another episode of the Dave Willis Podcast. Really quickly, before we get to today's episode, I just want to mention, yes, my site is having some issues, so please bear with me. Some of you have actually mentioned that to me on Twitter. I'm actually working on figuring out what exactly went wrong with my site, but it looks fine, but if you start clicking around, it just starts crapping out with an internal error. I was going to put up all of my photos from Wizard World, which I just attended this past weekend. But I can't because the site's having all these problems. But if you go look at my Twitter, at DD Podcast, or even at my main Twitter, at Dave_Bullis, or on my Instagram, you're going to see tons of those photos. I'm posting them up all the time. I took over 200 photos. I'm not going to put all 200 up, obviously. Just some of the better ones that I really liked. And you can even see the pictures of when I got to meet Chuck Norris. Okay, well, maybe it's not the real Chuck Norris, but you get the picture. And I actually was speaking with Chuck's agent about having him on the podcast, but to no avail. But I did get to see Chuck chatting with the local news crew. He showed up around 6 o'clock or so on Saturday night, which is like June the 3rd. And the local news crew was interviewing him, and he was also in town to do a QVC infomercial. So maybe when he's in that town next time, I can interview him, and we'll see what happens. But in other news, I'm working on a few things. If you're listening to this episode and whatever you're writing, I know where this episode is about writing and screenwriting software. So whatever you're working on, after you get done listening to this episode, just tweet me and tell me what you're working on. I'm interested to know. I really want to know what everyone's working on right now. Do you have time anymore to work on stuff? Have you put stuff off to the side? Well, we're going to talk all about stuff like that. And my next guest is a very busy guy who graciously came down to talk to me because I know he's got 10 million things going on. And one of the things that we're going to talk about is WriterDuet, which is his program. So in this episode of the Dave Willis Podcast, my next guest is a screenwriter and, again, a software developer. This is episode 165, Writing Your Story, with guest Guy Goldstein.
You're listening to the Dave Willis Podcast.
So it's my pleasure, Guy, and I've actually used WriterDuet. I actually use it right now as my primary screenwriting software. I've pretty much gotten rid of everything else, and I'm just now I'm full-fledged into WriterDuet. Sorry, I almost misspoke there, but I'm full-fledged into WriterDuet, and honestly, it is the best screenwriting software I've ever used, and honestly, it's actually. The one thing, Guy, that actually held me back from actually trying it, and I'm going to admit this, was the cloud, the idea of the cloud. I'm one of those guys, because I know you're an IT guy too, and I work in IT as a day job, and I'm one of those guys that likes to have stuff on like a flash drive, And what happens is, whenever I hear stuff like the cloud, I'm always like, well, what if I'm at a coffee shop and I can't get my script? You know what I mean?
Totally.
And so, but like when I started using the whole program, I started realizing, oh wait, there's an actual like software that I can download, and that actually solves the problem.
Yeah, and that's really important to me because obviously when you want to write, it doesn't matter where you are. You have the idea and you need to get it out. So offline mode was a really important feature, and having the desktop application, it seamlessly works online and offline. So if you write without an internet connection, you don't have to worry about it. As soon as you connect again to the internet, you're going to automatically get that. All your changes are going to go up to the cloud if you have a collaborator, or if you just wrote on a different computer or a different mobile device or whatever, all your changes will automatically sync as soon as they reconnect to the internet.
And that's what really sold me on the program. And so Guy, just to get started, I want to ask, what brought you to create WriterDuet?
Well, originally, the backstory is I was a programmer for many years. I've been an actor since I was about 5 years old. I've been sort of doing improv and writing for many years. And the first product I made for writers was actually not WriterDuet. It was this program called ReadThrough. And let's just say it's largely a failure, but it was a cool idea and still is. And we actually have it as a plugin inside WriterDuet right now. What it allows you to do is have voice actors or full cast of computer voices perform your script online. So instead of struggling to get 20 actors in a room to do a read-through, which I had done a number of times for my own writing, it allowed you just to have computer voices if you're just listening to yourself in your car, just to like hear the script instead of seeing it on paper for the 100th time, and then have actual actors perform it, see if it connects the way you expect it to or hoping it would, or sometimes even better than you thought it would. And then that was the original reason I got into software for writers, literally because I wanted that product. I was using the computer voices when I would drive. I used to live in Santa Barbara. I would drive to LA, which is like an hour and a half, 2 hours away. And so I could listen to my script, make all my notes on the voice recorder. And when I got home, I would apply all those notes. And then with the full cast one, I got to like really hear actors. And so it was all about myself. Everything's about me. You'll notice that theme in my life. So WriterDuet really came from, admittedly, it wasn't the story I always wish it were, which is I had a co-writer. It's not true. I did not have a co-writer. No one would put up with me that long. But I was really interested in screenwriting software. I'd used Celtics when I started. Then I started using Final Draft. And as someone who is, making software for a living, there were things that I didn't like about either one. But the number one thing that was so obviously missing was the real-time collaboration. And that was the entire impetus for this. It was just knowing that if you did have a co-writer, and so many people do, especially in the professional ranks, you'll notice, I'm not saying the exact numbers, I don't remember it, but a very, very high percentage of feature films in Hollywood have co-writers. And when you're in TV, virtually every writer's room is a number of writers. They don't necessarily write all the scripts together, but they brainstorm, they collaborate on the outlines and on the structure. And then when they're doing the punch-up rounds, you often have everyone throwing out jokes or having ideas and improving the script collaboratively. So realizing that was the big missing hole, that's where I started with. And then once we had the collaboration, a lot of people were switching to WriterDuet or using it as an add-on on top of a Final Draft or Celtics, which we were fully compatible with, where you could import their scripts and export them as well. But we didn't have all the features that you needed to make your only writing solution. So that was the sort of iterative process of getting like feedback from real writers who wanted it to be their only writing source because it was so much more convenient, but either had features that were in Final Draft and they liked, and that was fine, I made those, or no one was doing, but they just seemed like really good ideas, like the infinite revision history. So that doesn't come from anything other than a writer instead of saying, hey, it wouldn't be cool if I could see all my past versions of lines. And I realized we could do that super easily, or I could go back in time to a previous version of the script. And so I took notes like that and ideas like that. We're like, yeah, we can do that. And so you could probably count 90% of the features in WriterDuet came from just launching a product super early, getting all that feedback from real writers, and implementing all their ideas as efficiently as I could.
I've actually used Celtics. I've used Final Draft. Do you remember Sophocles? Have you ever tried that software?
I'll say the funny thing about it, I have not tried it because I don't think I can find it. I don't know if it's possible to find right now. But I actually, maybe I'm incorrect on that one. But I had a number of people say, oh, man, I remember this program called Sophocles, and it apparently had a pretty good cult following. People really liked it. So I don't know the backstory exactly, but I think there was one guy kind of like me at the time. Now my company's getting a little bigger. But one guy who had made that, and it's kind of probably a similar person who just liked software for himself and for other writers.
Yeah, exactly. And what happened was he just basically sold the company to, I think, Final Draft, and they basically bought the company. They bought the company and then just shuttered it. And basically, I actually when he sold it, he actually uploaded the code or something right to a site or something like that. And somebody, or just basically, I think he just didn't make a big stink out of somebody uploaded a pirated copy now because he doesn't own it anymore, and they're closing it down anyway. So I remember a friend of mine gave it to me on again, here we go again with flash drives. He gave it to me on a flash drive, and he goes, here, just use this. And I used that for years. And then I used I kind of weaned into Celtics and then Final Draft. And then I've tried Fade In and also what is that, Scrivener, and now I'm into WriterDuet.
Yeah, I think that's a lot for people, and it's funny because we always as writers should not be worried about the software we're using. It's actually stupid to obsess over it when the words on the script come out the same either way. That's a truth. I am a person who makes software and still believes you should not obsess over it, but I believe you should use the best tools for what you're doing every day, hopefully, or a large percent of your days. And I feel like people organically just try different things because they're just kind of curious what's out there. And in the end, it doesn't really make a difference to your writing, to the results of your writing. But it makes a difference to your process. Like, it makes it easier to put words on paper. And if we do anything, if, for example, if you're collaborating and you don't have to wait for an email from your co-writer, or if you want to see, hey, man, I had this really funny line, and WriterDuet has a feature where you can actually search back in time and find any version of your script with a line that maybe was removed or whatever at some point. And you're like, damn, I just can't remember what draft it's in. I don't want to look through my backups. With WriterDuet, you just find it. And little features like that are the things that I think people not should obsess over, but should look for, because it's going to actually make their writing life better. So I kind of have two sides to it, where I'm like, yes, you should not have religious wars over what software you use. Whatever makes you happy is cool, but you should find something that actually makes your writing more effective.
Yeah, I concur, because I know you and I both work in IT, and really that kind of gives us a different sort of view of software and using it. But again, it should be all about the writing. I agree 110%, and I think that's what sort of stops a lot of people because they want to obsess. I mean, for instance, Guy, I had a friend of mine who actually used Microsoft Word to write a screenplay. And I actually said, are you just a glutton for punishment? Like, I said, how would you even format that? And he actually had a method. And the method was he would no indents for exposition / action, 2 indents for, I think it was characters. No, I'm sorry. It was like 3 indents for like dialogue and 4 indents for, I mean, my God, I was like, how could you possibly do this without like just like throwing your laptop out the window? But and that's why I like the screenwriting software that we see now, because again, with WriterDuet, you can actually you don't have to worry about formatting it correctly. You know what I mean? All that is done for you.
Yeah, and that's like the goal of any software in general, in my opinion, is whatever you're trying to do, you should not realize you're even using software. Is my goal. Like, it just happens. Like, you just start hitting keys, and the right thing just happens as much as possible. Like, no one goes to a software, or not no one, but very few people go thinking, man, do I want to spend 2 days learning this? Like, you just want to start using it, start writing. And so I think with what we do and what we try to accomplish is making it as seamless as possible for a person who's never even written a screenplay before. Like, one of the early decisions we made, one of the first ones, was I think everyone / almost everyone in the other products have a drop-down menu where you select character or dialogue or whatever. And, of course, you have tab and enter, et cetera, shortcuts. But this drop-down menu, first of all, it's inconvenient to click twice. Doesn't really tell you any information about what a slug line is or a character, why you would use one. And so one of the first decisions we made is having these big buttons for each one on the top of the script. And if you mouse over them, it actually explains, here's when you would use this, and here's what it is. And it doesn't get in your way. It's not like we're wasting space because the buttons, line up really nicely and it doesn't kill you. But little things like that, just trying to make it so a new writer can jump in or an old writer can, more effectively figure out what they're trying to accomplish was a big part of it, just to make it easy so you're not spending time worrying about the software.
Yeah, and that's where you're basically like, okay, look, you'll see the interface, and you're like, look, let's just get down to writing.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, and we can sort of, unconsciously do this, because that way you're just sort of flowing into the story. And that's something, too, I wanted to ask you, Guy. When you're coding, and you're, obviously you're a programmer, did you find that when you're coding and you're building something like WriterDuet, is it similar to how you write a screenplay at the same time? So basically because I know you've written screenplays as well, so when you're sort of writing screenplays and then also you're coding, do you notice if there's any sort of parallels to the two?
I think there's a huge amount, and I don't know if this is true universally, but I see a lot of engineers, programmers, people who are pretty technical who are interested in screenwriting, maybe more so than they'd be interested in other creative writing things, because there's a lot of technical stuff that goes into a screenplay, and not just technical in the sense of production, like technical in the sense of story structure that doesn't have to be there, but tends to exist. And so as someone who, with code, you have a very, very big vision that has to be broken apart into tractable pieces. And each of those tractable pieces has to accomplish its role. And then you say, well, how effectively can it do that? What can you make better in this thing? And that's how I look at a script. It's like, what is my big vision? What am I trying to accomplish? Okay, well, I'm trying to tell a story about, something important to me, whatever that is. how do I want to reflect that? And then you kind of break it into, well, what are the individual components? How do the components lead up to it? Like, what's our scenes? And how does each scene contribute to the act or whatever, the sequence? How does it affect other characters who are engaged in the story? And each storyline, like if you're technical, like each scene could be considered a function, right? And each storyline is each character is a variable that kind of goes through different functions. I don't know. It's not analogous exactly, but I do take that same idea of really high level structure of what I'm trying to accomplish, broken into really small pieces. And what I think's made me like an effective programmer and a less effective writer is I like seeing little tiny things. Like I like, okay, I'll just make this one simple thing. I'll make this, and that connects here. I like the connections between two things. So even when I'm coding, I have this, I'm like, oh man, if I make this feature, that means we can do this other thing over here. And I get really excited. And like, what if we did this? And it's the same with a screenplay where like, whoa, if this character picks up a knife in this scene, that's foreshadowing to this other moment where they're going to pick up a gun. And you're like, oh, I don't know, whatever it is. And those connections are, I think, what makes sometimes even they don't necessarily get noticed by the casual viewer of a movie or a person looking at the product. But that's what makes really things exciting when they connect perfectly. Everything lines up the way you wouldn't have realized if you were doing just one little part of it.
Yeah, because I've actually looked into coding, and when I know a little bit of HTML and stuff like that, but just very little bit. And when I started getting into it, I kind of noticed there would be a parallel. The reason being, you have to actually, there's breaks in the line, there's all sorts of stuff. And again, I'm nowhere near as good as you in programming, but I could see some kind of parallel. And then when I saw WriterDuet, I'm sorry, and it's kind of I just wanted to make sure I asked that parallel question because I imagine there would be at some point, because I mean, you're obviously, you're writing code, you're taking it away, you're almost like creating a scratch pad, you know what I mean, and then you're trying to sort of, even when you go into stuff like GitHub, a friend of mine who works for Apple was telling me, hey, go into GitHub, you'll see a sample code, you could actually see how guys did all this stuff, and you could actually take it and try to make your own stuff with it. Still, it's still interesting stuff like that, and that's why, again, I wanted to have you on the show because I think it's pretty interesting to talk about.
Yeah, like the inspiration of most code is in some ways other code, right? You have an idea, you see something in one product, and you think, wow, that'd be really cool if I applied it. It's funny, but I spend all my time in a programming text editor, and there are features I've implemented or we've implemented in WriterDuet that either came from a text editor I was playing with that I thought was cool, or personally, I'll give you an example. I constantly have like something I'm editing in code, and then I have to jump somewhere else to see how it works, so I can remember how they connect or whatever. And there's a feature it doesn't exist, or I just came too stupid to find it in my text editor, that I wound up implementing in WriterDuet for writers because I needed it so much, which was a pin drop, which is literally you drop a pin in a location. You can drop as many as you want, and then I can read somewhere else and jump back to the previous location without what I actually do in my text editor. I hit a key and I delete it, so I can press undo and jump back there, but it's a pain in the neck. So with pins, it's literally a feature that I just wanted myself for coding to make it easy to find. Maybe I have 3 or 4 locations that are all really related, so I drop pins in each one of them and jump through them, so I don't have to constantly find where I was.
So what was one of the toughest things to implement into WriterDuet from having it out there, and from screenwriters obviously asking questions, maybe asking for certain features. So was there any that come to mind which were the toughest to implement? Yeah,
one that we did relatively recently, and I can't say it wasn't worth it, but oh my god, what a freaking disaster the time was. We spent like 3 months on what I think is actually not the most important thing we've done, but just really cool. It's hard to say it was worth 3 months, but you can in WriterDuet have parallel columns, and we already had done dual dialogue where you could have multiple characters talking at once. But we hadn't done like this fully expressive multi-column layout where you could have page breaks in the middle, they could have parallel pages, didn't really matter. And so you can write parallel scenes. For virtual reality, you could have different directions where you literally had 2 scenes going on at once. So if your camera's looking one way or your character was looking one way, you'd see one thing, different another. And it's also good for documentaries where you do what's called audio-visual layout, where you have the audio on one side and the visual on the other. And that way, for like voiceovers and things like that, you can line it up correctly, because this single non-parallel you'd have to write while video is going on, and then voiceover, whatever it is. So the parallel stuff was actually super complicated. It was one of those things that in my head, it was like, oh man, this is going to take like a month. And I thought that was bad. And it was brutal. But yeah, there have been a few things. I think the things that we've actually done that have been maybe the most successful and impactful haven't been that hard, actually. They've been things that made sense, and you could kind of think about how they'd fit. And it was, as a programmer, and the same thing for a screenwriter, I think, is you have to find things that fit into the vision pretty well. Where if you're trying to accomplish something, and I'm guilty of the opposite of this, or the bad version, where you get distracted. You think, oh man, this would be so cool if we did this one little thing, or we could do this feature, and maybe it doesn't serve the product or the screenplay, even though it's a cool idea. And you have to kill your darlings. You have to not necessarily delete features, although sometimes you do, but you have to make decisions that serve the bigger vision instead of necessarily being the coolest thing you could do that moment or the best idea. Because in the end, you could do anything. In your screenplay, you could make the absolute every detail exactly the way you wanted it, every joke, every whatever. But how many years are you going to spend on that screenplay? Will you ever release it to anybody? Will you ever actually make it if that's your goal, which hopefully is for a lot of people? So I think you have to kind of say, this is what I'm trying to accomplish. This is how I'm going to get there. These are the things that fit with that vision. And mostly that doesn't turn out to be too hard because it all kind of works together to make what you want instead of it being 10 different things that don't really fit.
And as we talk also about all the features and stuff like that, I know, WriterDuet 3.0 is actually launching tomorrow, which is June the 1st. But when this comes out, it'll be a few days after. But June the 1st, WriterDuet 3.0 is coming out. So, I know there's a ton of new features coming out for it. The biggest one is the mobile app, which I am huge about. And I know a lot of people go, how can you write a screenplay on a phone? And I say, well, when most phones now are the size of iPads, it's kind of easy, right?
Yeah, it's actually really interesting. And so just to clarify, we're coming out in, let's call it the public beta. We've been in private beta. We're kind of let people join in tomorrow, and thereafter. We'll see how long that phase goes before we kind of roll out to every single person. But to answer your question, like about what it is with mobile, I don't think it's a ideal writing platform for many people, although I should take that back because mobile doesn't mean just phones. It means iPads, it means Android tablets, etc. So having a mobile on your iPad actually works pretty well. A lot of people were telling me they were using WriterDuet on their iPad. We're just making it a better experience as an app. But for me personally, I don't think I would write an entire screenplay, but I think we maybe talked about this earlier or whatever. But when you have inspiration, you want to put it down somewhere. And if you can just have your screenwriting program with you no matter where you are and always jotting down ideas, making notes, reading scripts on your phone in just an easier way, that's, I think, the ideal use case. If you want to sit down there and write a 200-page script, 120-page script or whatever on your phone, God bless. But I wouldn't do that probably.
Yeah, I find it's good, though, if you ever have to actually just like if you're writing on your laptop, for instance, and you have to go out somewhere and, you're in line somewhere and you're like, oh, crap, that idea, and you can actually just pop open your screenplay, maybe write a line or two. The reason I like that better than opening something like, let's say, Evernote is because, again, everything's in one place now.
Yeah.
I don't have I'm sorry?
I see, yeah, everything's synced up in real time, so you don't have to worry about, did you transfer that scene in? Did you lose some work or whatever?
Yeah, because then when I get home, I have to open up Evernote, make sure I find that, put it back in there, and now go, okay, now we're back to where we were. That's why I like the idea of everything in one place. That way I'm not constantly bouncing around to different apps and stuff like that.
Totally.
So, and I know you were talking about it's going into public beta. So, can you talk about like some of the other features that are going to be seen in WriterDuet 3?
Yeah. So there are a bunch, but at the high level, like the big things, one of the coolest ones I think is that we've implemented what we're calling drafts or branch drafts, and so the branches allow you to. First of all, you can already export an old version of WriterDuet anytime. You can go back to like 3 days ago at 4:15 p.m. You can just find any version ever. But with branches, you can go back in time and you can actually keep writing from there in the same script. So without like necessarily opening a whole new document, having two versions of your script, you have two branches within your script. And so what this lets you do is, first of all, easily jump to any point, just see what it looks like, but also have two different ideas. And you can say, hey, well, you know what, I went off this, I was writing for last week. It didn't necessarily work the way I wanted it to. I'm going to write some other stuff. And then maybe you wind up merging it together. You can kind of like merge branches if you need to, or you can have a different version that you share your script with somebody. You say, hey, which one do you like better? Without having these two manual documents that you have to deal with, these branches. And what we're doing, this is that's the current rendition in WD3. But the system is going to actually allow you to do much more than this. So we're going to allow you to do, for example, what we're calling ghost mode, where you can, for example, you have a co-writer, and you have an idea that isn't necessarily ready for your co-writer to see, but you don't want to be writing another script because you want to see what they're doing. All their stuff is, let's go say, ready for live, but your stuff is more private at the time. So you can go into ghost mode where you're getting all their updates, but they're not seeing what you're doing in this branch. And then you can toggle back to the main branch and write from there, and they see it, and then you can toggle back to your ghost branch. And this is actually a very common, like I said before, we actually take ideas from the world of technology and programming. So this is basically how GitHub, Common Repository for programmers, works, where you can have multiple versions of your code. And I'm working on a branch that is potentially buggy right now, but I'm going to make sure it works by the time I merge it with the main branch. And so a long people do that in a screenplay, I think, is really interesting, even for yourself. Like, so you can have, a producer's draft that you turn in, and then you can kind of go off and write in a different direction. And then your producer gives you notes. And you're like, shoot, I haven't finished this whole other storyline. Well, I'll fix their notes now. But you don't have to have now two different copies of the script. It all automatically can merge anytime you want. So that's probably one of the bigger things. Then we also have new stuff with notifications inside the website and app itself. We have, let's see, some other cool. Oh yeah, we have a tagger. We're actually launching our own tagger finally, which has been a pretty heavily requested feature. And tagger is going to do two things. So if you're familiar with the Final Draft tagger, it allows you to tag props, characters, etc. So you could do call sheets and you can set up for scheduling, etc. But what we're doing is that, and we're letting you tag based on plot points. So you could have an A story, B story, etc. Tag those, and then you can filter just one set of tags. So you can say, hey, just show me the A story, and everything else in your script that does not match that tag is hidden, and you're just seeing one storyline, and you edit it. It's going into the main document, but you're seeing one view. And when I said before about like you have to make sure things fit together in a vision, what our vision is for screenwriting is actually really the branches and the tags. I think those kind of tie really well together, where you can have any number of versions of your script. You can go off in any number of directions, and you can reduce any single direction to the part you're looking for, the part that you're interested in. So if you just want to see one character's dialogue, you can pull up that one character's dialogue. If you just want to see the scenes the character's in, or the lines that have some, prop in or whatever, you can find whatever you're looking for and simplify your script to just those pieces. So you don't have to see 120 pages all the time. You can look at 3 pages that are just the part that's relevant to you.
And see, stuff like that is really, really cool. I also like that ghost mode.
Yeah.
Because and the whole idea of collaboration too. I also like the idea of, even if you don't have a co-writer, if I have to show it to somebody anyway, rather than email them, I can just post it on there, send them a link, and you know what I mean? And I don't have to worry about here's the script, and then, you know what I mean? And then, they're going to go, oh, I don't have Adobe Reader or whatever. Right. You know what I mean? Well, it's stuff like that is also, I've noticed, that over the years, like little things like that, but they add up. It's not just one little thing, right? It's 10,000 little things that add up to this huge amount of time. So, and then again, obviously, when you're using all these different features, and then when you actually are really, really getting into it, I mean, that's when you can actually, again, like we're saying, you can subconsciously start doing a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, and the reader one's a good one in general. We haven't done exactly the version I want for this, but we have a read-only mode, which allows me to invite you to my script, and you can't edit it, but you can add notes. And why that's convenient versus a PDF is the notes can be done in line where they actually are relevant. So you can go through a line like, whoa, I have no idea what's going on, or why'd she say this, or wow, this is really funny, or whatever you want to give. And so you can put that directly in the script, and then if I have several people reading it, I can see all the notes in one place. We have another future version of this planned where we're going to make it like, right now I think it's not really meant for, if I'm going to send it out to 1,000 people and just like get all their feedback, it's not really built for that. It's more meant for maybe a producer or a few like important people to the script. What we want to do eventually is that version where it essentially replaces a PDF, where I send out my script to any number of people. They can all come into the script. They can all read it. They can't necessarily see with each other who else is there. they can't see each other's comments. They just make their own. You see the collection of everything, but it's kind of a cheap way to share your script with getting a lot of people's feedback collected into one place. That's the vision on that feature.
So Guy, has there ever been anybody that you've heard about who's used WriterDuet, who you've heard about who's just you've been blown away by, like any famous people or anything like that, where you're like, oh my God, they're using my program? Who would have thought, right?
Yeah, it happens all the time, and it's interesting exactly the way you said it, because I have no reason to know. I don't look at who's using our product mostly. Sometimes I find out because they email me or whatever. I'm like, that name sounds familiar. Jump into Google. I'm like, wait a second. So we've had that a number of times. Usually, I say this not insulting to everyone else, but I can tell when they're a professional just based on the questions they ask, like what they're writing to me about. I'm like, okay, you clearly are doing something real. And then I look, I'm like, oh yeah, you're like a showrunner. We just found out recently. I was at a screenwriting conference in Pittsburgh on a panel with the creator of Downward Dog, which is a new ABC show. And just coincidence that we were happy to be there, I guess, together. And I mentioned from WriterDuet. He's like, oh, yeah, we use WriterDuet. And I'm like, oh, cool. I didn't know. Would never have found that out, except he happened to be there. And so we've had some pretty big TV shows have used us. The next Spider-Man movie coming out, Spider-Man Homecoming, was written on WriterDuet, which I'm really excited about. Some other pretty major movies have come out. But the truth is, I don't even know. Like, for all I know, there are dozens or hundreds of TV shows and movies that are just using it. Like, we found out another TV show recently, I can't remember the name even, that we were talking to, we were trying to convince them to use it, we thought, and we found out they were already using it. I'm like, okay, this is a short conversation. So it comes up a lot, and hopefully there's a tipping point where we're no longer... we're still going to be excited that they're using it, but we're not going to be surprised. We're going to be like, yeah, of course you're using it. It's just like Final Draft really is the industry standard at this time. Like most TV shows, most feature films are written on it. We don't think that's going to be the case at some point, hopefully in the pretty near future.
Yeah, and you brought up a good point too. The new Spider-Man movie is using WriterDuet. So, one of the old arguments was, well, hey, you have to use the industry standard, which the reason is because everybody can't have a different page 5 or a different page 20, and also because this is what everyone uses to sort of break down the script. This is what the prop department has to go through the script and find out what props, you know what I mean, and they have to break everything down. You have to break a schedule out of this script, and as this happens. So when something like this new Spider-Man movie is using WriterDuet, are you ever planning on actually just sort of making it also? I know this isn't about screenwriting, but making like a sort of almost like a feature that would help you with making like day out of days and stuff like that? So
the easy answer is no, and there's a good reason for this. Number one is we don't really. I don't know. I don't use scheduling stuff because I'm not a good enough writer that I've been produced, but I don't feel qualified to make that software. And I actually feel like other people have done a reasonable job. I know some people who are making products like that now, new versions. Actually learned about one today that I hadn't heard of before that's doing it, apparently doing a reasonable job on the cloud. So I'm not convinced that there's a need for us to do that. And we don't want to create redundant software just because us doing it. If we can actually make something better, we're going to make it better. If we can take a process that is just really not good. And the other thing is, we think there's so much more. Like, I don't know what other people see in the screenwriting world, but we see so many features that could be added and so much stuff that we can do in terms of outline, in terms of structure. And they're not like, and not to be ridiculing other products, but there are some competitive screenwriting products that will come out with things that I think are just there to have a feature with a name so you can advertise it. And I don't think they actually help writers necessarily. Some might. But I want to create stuff that actually makes creativity more fluid, more engaging, more collaborative. And that's the stuff we're going to worry about. Like the technical stuff on the scheduling and budgeting side, we just did introduce Tagger. So now you can tag up your script in V3. Where you can then import it into a scheduling program and go from there. But I don't know. I'm not saying this is the end, but my opinion is we're about as late in the production cycle we want to go. We want to go earlier. We want to help people in their initial creativity. Like we were just talking to one of our users at this really cool production studio in town in Austin, where we are. And he was talking about how he used it to, but he does not use WriterDuet actually for this. He uses other products to write a pitch for his, or a treatment for his stuff before it goes to producers. And I was like, well, that's really interesting. Like, that's an interesting problem of how do you construct that in a really efficient way? Because he told me, like, you might spend a week just preparing this sort of pitch material that isn't necessarily going to be used ever again. It's more just to give people the idea, then he's going to go write the script. Like, if we could help you do the part that is artistically interesting, i.e., or e.g., I guess, but the character breakdowns, the plot stuff, the log lines, those are helpful as a creator. But the stuff that makes it look cool, like visually, that's just something that anyone, creative or not, could kind of, or not creative, but a writer or not, could make. What if we can help you formalize some sort of creative stuff like the character breakdowns, pre-writing even? So, yeah, I think that's the vision. How do we help more? And then beyond that, honestly, we're going to do stuff that goes beyond screenwriting. We're just interested in creative writing and creativity in general. Like, how can we help people have their ideas and express them faster and more efficiently in a more, like I said, engaging way?
One feature that I would like to pitch, Guy, is and this is just pie in the sky, take it for what it's worth, is I always would like to see a more involved scratch pad.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is a scratch pad that is almost like it can format, but it also meaning it's very flexible with what it can do, and it's kind of like Futurama. There's a funny quote in Futurama. There was a talk about, hey, it was great when the day scientists invented magic. But I know I'm kind of what I'm describing is like this all-encompassing, but perfect thing. But I just want to say a more engaging scratch pad. I remember using scratch pads before, and I think it was, honest to God, Sophocles, but that's just something that like Final Draft and Fade In and Scrivener and all those, they haven't done that anywhere near as well. And honestly, that's what an idea I want to pitch to you was just a more involved scratch pad, where basically you can sort of let your ideas flow a little bit better, because sometimes when you're actually in that script, some people have a lot of, like, they don't want to actually write a scene out. They rather, you know what I mean? Because it almost feels permanent if you're doing the script. I know sometimes how writers sometimes think. It's almost like, oh my God, I can't hit the delete button. So that's just one of the features that I would just like to see. And honestly, I'd say if I don't see it, Guy, believe me, I understand. But that would just be cool to see.
Well, I have good news for you. So,
all right.
Yeah. So actually, one of the other features, it's to me, it's not a huge one, but maybe to a lot of people, hopefully, it'll be really more important than even I realize. So there are two features. One is existing, and that's the one, or it will exist in W3, which is you can actually have multiple scripts, any number, in fact, open in one single document. So you have your main script editor, and then you have these little floating windows, and you can open, probably there's a practical limitation of how many you want to have open, but you get any number sitting on the side, and they can be like scratchpad documents. You can put whatever you want in each one of them. You can have one where you put like character stuff, or you put scenes that you're not sure about. You can have one that you use for like just internal notes, like a personal notes section, whatever you use them for. And so you can have all those scripts open in this little like draggable section that you can move around, so you can structure your screen however you want. So that is coming in version 3. And that's it's a screenplay writing. It's the same WriterDuet, just a sort of mini version of it. And you can write, either text or notes, or you can actually write full scenes with character and dialogue, etc. And then the other thing, and this is the one that is to me like the big 3.5, whatever number you want to call it. It's not quite big enough for 4, let's say, but is a total revamp of how people do outlining and scratchpad, just like maybe you're even more thinking of than the sort of mini editor one. And what that is to me, and this is like, I kind of hinted at it before, it's the idea of filtering. So right now you can construct these tags inside WriterDuet. You tag, this is A story, B story, whatever. And you can filter out just the content you want. Well, what if we applied those filters in a sort of broad way where we say, hey, these are outline notes, or these are scratchpad scenes, or whatever they are. And you could freely write those right inside your script, but you knew they weren't real. You knew they were just like virtual. They were tagged as sort of segregated, and maybe by default you hid those, or maybe by default you just saw those, whatever mode you were in of looking at your script. And then the outliner could filter your script, say, hey, just show me the outliner notes for scene A, and the next one is scene B, scene C, and these are all actual real text editors. And so the idea is you can write whatever you want freely, and you just use these tags to explain essentially what they are. Tag could be semantic meaning to you, and it's your own thing. And then you filter in or filter out the pieces that you do or don't want. So I think that's exactly what, those two things I think kind of combine to be what you're really looking for, which is the freedom to just put ideas down as quickly as you have them without the feeling of now they're permanent. And even the opposite, another feature we're going to come out with really soon is, so when you're writing a script, you delete something. And that actually feels really permanent as well. And it's not. With WriterDuet, you have infinite revision history. You can always go back. You can say, oh, man, there's a great line with tacos. And you search for tacos, and you find that line that's been deleted. But it still feels permanent. And so what we're going to do is have a feature where, like, just within a keystroke, whatever the keystroke we come up with, is delete and save to, like, a repository or whatever. And we'll just have that little document that's, maybe visible, maybe not, but just hiding on the side that's keeping track of all this content that you were deleting. But then you don't have to worry about it being gone. You have this other second script being created as you go with all your just ideas that weren't working. So I think that's what you're leading to, I think, is what we're going for as well.
Yeah, because that is what I was going for. Because when you're writing, and you're doing all this sort of thing, and you're writing all these scenes out, and you're writing ideas, and you're doing this, and you're kind of sometimes you're jumping back and forth. You kind of don't want to put a scene in there that might not fit later on, because then later on you're like, oh, what the hell was this thing? You know what I mean? And then it's kind of it's stuck in there, and it feels permanent. So I think with a more of like a flexible scratch pad, that's what I was going for. But see, Guy, you read my mind. You know exactly what I was going to ask for.
Yeah, I mean, the short version is there are two things we've learned. One is being a writer ourselves. Like, we're all the team is 5 full-time, 2 part-time now, plus 2 dogs, so they did the heavy lifting. So we're all like writers and filmmakers. Our programming team is all into creative writing and film. So because of that, we understand, like, not necessarily before you have the idea, but as soon as you said it, I'm like, I know why you want that, and I don't just know the technical implementation. I kind of understand how you'll use it, and I can think of maybe, oh, well, what if you did this other thing, or I can take suggestions, because we're also super interested in listening to users. And because of that, like, not to say, it's not brilliant when anyone comes up with it, but we just sort of wait sometimes. When we hear one person suggest a feature, we're like, yeah, good idea. And then we just kind of wait. And then you notice another person suggested the same thing. Like, huh, okay, that's interesting. And just because in the beginning I would just do everything, because we had pretty limited feature set when I started 4 years ago. So I could do it all. And it was just me at the time. So it's pretty easy to quickly iterate. As we get bigger, we don't necessarily have that liberty. We have too many users to listen to every single feature, but we just sort of track, hey, people keep asking for exactly what you're talking about, like a scratch pad, an outliner, and better ways to do that. And we're going to, probably have hundreds more features suggested by users over the next 6 months or so. And so it's just, keep coming. So if you got other ones, anyone, you and everyone listening, we're here to not necessarily solve the creative process, because I don't think that means anything, but we're here to help people be creative in a way that works for them, whatever that means.
And that is fantastic. And because, Guy, we've been talking for about maybe 40 minutes roughly. Is there anything that we didn't discuss that you may wanted to talk about, or anything you want to say to sort of put a period at the end of this whole conversation?
No, I mean, ultimately, I think the thing that I want people to take away is they should find what tools make them more effective at what they're doing. If you're writing and you're happy with your writing process, I don't have a problem if you want to use Celtics or anything else or Final Draft. I just think that if you're not happy with the process, the things that annoy you, if you're like, yeah, well, it's fine, but it's not. If it doesn't excite you every time you open up the screenwriting product, maybe that's not the right one for you. You want something that inspires you to be more creative, and if we don't do that, then we're not the right ones either. It's just we always want to be able to find that perfect tool for their use.
Yeah, and again, I think WriterDuet is a perfect tool because, again, even guys like me who is afraid of the cloud, because, again, if I'm at somewhere and I can't download that script, but then again, you solve that with the app. And I want to give a shout out to Mike Bierman, who's actually been on the podcast before. And Guy, you and I both know Mike. He runs the Screenwriters Who Can Actually Write Facebook group. He is the one who actually got me into WriterDuet. And he was the one who said, you know what, they have an app and it actually solves all those problems.
I gotta say, no shout out to Mike. I hope he's listening. Hey, Mike. And this is to all our users, actually. Like, we do no marketing. If you want to, like, Google screenwriting software, we're finally on the first page now, but you'll never see an ad. I mean, never. But right now, you can see an ad for WriterDuet, and we don't do, like, Facebook ads. We've tried a few. We've probably spent a couple $100 on Facebook ads just to see what happened, and the answer was nothing. We don't market, and the reason is Final Draft is really good at marketing. Like, they've done a great job, and if I had to, like, if I could be as good as they are at marketing, I would, trust me. So we don't. We just sort of say, hey, we're making what we think is the best product. And people like Mike just really got attached to it because he was using it. It helped him in some ways. And he could honestly recommend it. And he did. And that group, I don't know what the percents are, but it's a pretty high percent of writers in that group use WriterDuet because Mike introduced it to them. And then they really liked it. And they would then, the next person who asked, hey, I'm either having a problem with the screen program or I'm just curious what's out there, all the other members would say, oh, yeah, I use it too. And they would get excited. And, it's a compliment to us. I'm self-complimenting, I guess. But it's really a testament to me how people in the screenwriting community are willing to not only give back to us by giving their feature ideas, but help each other by, to me, advertising with the best product. And I guess thank you to everyone who does that. And also, please continue. That's my personal one. Because in the end of the day, like, writers are here to help other writers. That's why you do this podcast. I'm guessing it's not for all the money they pay you to do it. You're just here, like, to help a creative community, and that's what we're here for as well.
Yeah, honestly, Guy, the whole story behind this podcast is, I used to do a lot of creative work. I got stifled, and right around 2014, I decided to start this podcast. For a lot of reasons, and I'm sure all the listeners who've actually listened since episode 1, which there actually are people, as shocked as I am, they're probably saying, no, don't tell this whole story again. So I'll spare everybody from telling it again. But that was the idea, though. The short of it is, it's just to do something creative and something fun. And each week, that's why I say this is like a film school. An audio film school, because each week I'm bringing in a different person who has an entirely different background, screenwriters, producers, directors, actors, marketing people. I mean, you name it, I've had him on the show. I mean, I've had Kazian Oviz on here, who was the executive producer of Dallas Buyers Club. Nice. I mean, it's just like, he said yes. Why? I have no idea, but I was like, okay. I've had Mark Bienstock, who's a producer for M. Night Shyamalan stuff. I mean, it's just been, and then I've just been blown away by like all the talented people, like yourself, Guy, who I've had on this podcast. And it is a small world, too, because we both know Mike Bierman. So it's just such a small world, and it's just getting smaller.
Yeah, writers are so isolated sometimes. Just that we all know this from writing. Like, you kind of get in that mode and you're lonely. Don't stay in there. That's my biggest recommendation. Like, kind of find communities, find a Facebook group. Screenwriters Can Actually Write is one. There's a really good Reddit community for screenwriters where it's, even if you never contribute anything, I go there obsessively, admittedly, and even sometimes I like see WriterDuet questions on there, and I just kind of wait and sometimes see if anyone else is going to answer them before I do. I just really enjoy the communities that have been formed around such an isolated activity as writing, and people who are willing to give back and contribute. So hopefully everyone gets to participate in those.
Yeah, and that is a very good Facebook page too, and it's not very common to actually get a really awesome Facebook page where everyone's actually helping each other out. Usually, as you know, guys, social media, if you have like a Facebook page, it usually ends up in like some kind of flame war where it's like people fighting over absolutely nothing. And, because I mean, I've seen that tons of times, you know what I mean? And that's why I've kind of stayed away from a lot of those groups. But that one group is amazing, the Screenwriters Who Can Actually Write. And I'll link to that in the show notes as well. But Guy, it's been excellent having you on. And where can people find you at online?
You can find us on Twitter at WriterDuet. I think Facebook /WriterDuet or whatever the URL is for a group. Yeah, you'll see me around. I'm pretty out there. So if you catch me in the Reddit forum or the Screenwriters Can Actually Write, you'll find me pretty fast. So don't shy away from saying hi, anyone out there.
Yeah. And I will link to all of Guy's links in the show notes, as well as a link to check out WriterDuet. And everyone, it's DaveBullis.com. Twitter, it's at Dave_Bullis. You can check out the podcast, which is at DB Podcast, which I've been a little more active on. Guy Goldstein, I just want to say thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thank you again for having me. It's a really blast. It was a really good time.
Find Dave at davebullis.com. Please make sure to subscribe and share the podcast.